to the story behind the gear. This is the show where I talk about some of my gear and we talk about the stories that reasons I picked up the gear or how I acquired the gear. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the Maple Gretch kit. And I'm going to talk about where it came from, its origins of getting to me, the amount of times it's left me, and some unique things about this particular kit. So let's get started. Now, by the way, this is my Mr. Potato Head shirt that my wife bought for me. My son loved Mr. Potato Head as a child, and we used to get him that all the time. And Matt used to do this thing with a nose here thing, made a little noise and sound. So this was the Matt gift this year, my son, in tribute to my son, who's not with us. So I kind of fit the picture because I'm behind the Maple kit, which is yellow. This is almost Tony Williams yellow kind of shirt here. But anyhow, having a lot of fun with this particular shirt. So let's jump into the Maple Gretch kit. So this Maple Gretch kit is not a put together kit. This is a kit that's a conglomeration of a bunch of drums, individual drums that came together. And the origins of this drum kit go back to the 70s when I was taking lessons as a kid and I was studying with a teacher named Scott Hazen, who I've talked about many times on my shows. And Scott was my third drum teacher. He was my second drum teacher at Blue Note Music. And Scott's the guy that prepared me for college, gave me my first job as a drum teacher at a music store when he was running the Point Pleasant Blue Note Music Store. Scott also sent me on some of my earliest gigs. He sent me on my earliest wedding gigs, country gigs, big band gigs. I was filling in for Scott a lot of times. Scott would throw me work. And I was one of the guys he would send to fill in. I wasn't the only guy, but I was one of the guys. I was one of the young guys that he gave a shot to. We all need a guy like that that'll give a shot for us when we're young. We need somebody else to say, hey, call this drummer up. I do that today for certain drummers. I get a phone call for a gig and I say, yeah, give him a call. I think he can cut it. Yeah, I think he might be the right guy for your gig. That's what it was back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, and Scott was that guy for me. So Scott and I were friends from the time I was 16 years of age. He was at my wedding when I got married at 22. He came over my house occasionally. We had seasons where we were in each other's lives and seasons where we were outside of each other's lives. One of the seasons in the late 90s, we reconnected from probably a 7 or 8 year period where we really didn't talk very much. And it was during that period that we started to get into trading drum gear. It was a lot of fun. And there's lots of stories. The last story about the Noble Coolie I brought invokes Scott's name. There's a lot of the gear in my studio, a lot of the cymbals in my studio that go back to Scott Hazen, and to some extent. This kit's one of them. Now, when I acquired this kit, this 10-inch tom was a concert tom with a triple flange hoop. It had this 12-inch tom, which has a story to it on its own because it wasn't originally Scott's drum. This was my drum originally. So that's where the story will go to next. This floor tom, this Gretsch Maple, Catalina Maple floor tom, this Catalina Maple floor tom was not part of the kit at the time. And this 14 by 18 Gretsch 1980 square Gretch badge was part of the kit. It also came with a triple tom mount Ludwig bass drum tom holder, which was on the kit at the time. I actually have the part to put a third tom if I want to. I just took it off. It looks kind of weird. It also had another 12-inch Gretsch concert tom, maple, just like this 10. And it had a 9x13 Slingerland tom, which was actually a 13x13 Slingerland tom that was cut down to a 9x13 by Scott. Scott liked to do crazy stuff. Matter of fact, I think I got some of my bravery in drilling holes from knowing Scott Hazen, probably. I don't want to blame Scott for all the holes I've drilled in my drums, but I have done some crazy stuff with drums. And it also had a 14x14 Slingerland floor tom. which was big, thick 5-ply slinger loom with re-rings. It never really matched the kit. And that's probably why Scott wasn't playing it at the time when I got the kit from him. So let's go back a little bit back into the Blue Note days. The person Scott got the kit from was a kid named Phil Haberman. And Phil Haberman was a couple years older than me, but he took the lesson right before me with Scott. And one day, I was in there taking a lesson. I was there to take a lesson, and Phil was in the room, and we were both in the same exact spot in the Realistic Rock book, where it was. I think he was playing. I forget what number that was. I think it was like number 3. It was this crazy pattern. So it was right after. Anyhow, Phil was taking a lesson. I'm sitting outside waiting for my lesson. Scott comes out the door, and I remember Scott had his kit set up. It was a Slingerland kit at the time, set up in the back room, so we weren't doing the drum lesson upstairs on the pads where we normally did the lesson. And Scott came out and goes, "Hey, Earl, come in for a second." And he said, "Play this pattern for Phil. Just play it." And I go, just laid it in. And he says to Phil, he goes, "You hear how the snare drum is being hit? It's aggressive. The 2 and the 4 is aggressive. That's the way you got to play rock and roll. You got to play with that 2 and the 4. He's got the feel." By the way, that was something I would hear a lot in my life, that when guys heard me play rock and I played the 2 and the 4, I got the feel of rock music, which was that 2 and 4, that backbeat. Those other da-da-da-dum, ba-da-dum stuff was all a little bit lighter than the 2 and the 4, whacking it. Now, Phil was a kid who bought a lot of drums, and Scott bought drums, and Scott was one of Scott's early trading guys, and one of the kits that Scott traded was a Sonar Rosewood kit that he had for this little Gretsch kit. And that was somewhere in the 80s he did that with Phil. So this was Phil Haberman's kit, went to Scott. I meet up with Scott 96, 97, 98. I'm the corporate manager of safety and training for a company called RTK at the time. Scott's back to school studying computers and things like that. And we hooked up, and I met at his house at his drum dojo. And that night we spent like 5 hours together playing until like 3 in the morning. And we talked drums, and he had this kit here, and I started talking to him about a scheme to get him some Sabian cymbals from my friend Pat for a trade. And we started working on this massive trade with Scott and Pat. Now, I've talked about Pat too, because Pat's the other Noble Cooley guy for me. And in this trade, I traded the Noble Cooley and some other stuff to Pat. Pat traded back to me some Sabian cymbals and a Fibes kit. This brown Fibes drum kit. Well, the brown Fibes drum kit I got, and I used for a long time, for a while, and then I met up with Scott, and Scott was doing some gigs, and he had a Yamaha kit at the time, a Yamaha Maple Custom kit with an 18-inch bass drum. And Scott said to me, he said, "I need something a little bit heavier than this kit. This kit's a little bit too light with the 18-inch bass drums." I said, "I've always wanted an 18-inch bass drum. I got a Fibes kit." He said, "Well, maybe we can trade for that little Gretch kit I have. I have this little Gretch kit." And I remembered it. And I said, "Oh, yeah, that'd be cool. How if I trade the Fibes kit for the Gretch kit and some Sabian cymbals? I'm getting some Sabian cymbals from my friend Pat." Long and the short of it, somehow this crazy deal came together where I pulled that Fibes kit into the deal, and I traded the Fibes drum kit with the brown marble finish to Scott Hazen, and he gave me this Maple Gretsch kit. It was right around 97, 98, somewhere there. And as soon as I got the kit home, I said to myself, I said, I really want to have a single, I want a double-headed 10. I don't want a single-headed 10. So I took the lugs off of a snare drum I had, another Gretsch snare drum, and I put them on the bottom of this tom. So the double row of lugs on this tom are Gretsch lugs from a snare drum that I had from the 60s, a 60 snare drum, which is another story. I basically bought a snare drum off of a kid at his house when I was doing cable installation work for $30, and he gave it to me. So, long and the short of it, I built this 10-inch tom, and I had the double-headed 10-inch, double-headed 12. Now, the 12-inch tom is a 5-lug. That's traditional Gretsch. Actually, 10-inch toms are supposed to be 5 lugs too, but because this was a concert tom with triple flange hoops, it was 6 lugs. Gretsch made their concert toms, 10-inch toms at that time with 6 lugs. So I have a 6-lug, 6.5 by 10 double-headed Gretsch tom now that I put the bottom head on. Now, remember, I always talk about Steve Gadd. That's one of the things Steve Gadd did with the fiberglass toms. He put bottom heads on concert toms. So the idea wasn't that crazy to me, and that's why I did it. So I did that. This 12-inch tom, this 8x12, was actually a tom I bought in college. When I was in college at Jersey City State College for the first or second year, somebody came in and there were some Gretsch toms. There was a Gretsch tom and a Gretsch bass drum. And the guy sold them to me for like $15 each. I think I spent $30 total. And I bought a 14x20 bass drum with the wrap was really messed up. And then I bought a 12-inch, 8x12-inch tom with the wrap really messed up. That was blue. One was white, one was blue. It was white swirl, and it was blue diamond color. So I basically one day was hanging out with Scott after I was in college for a while, and we were playing some music at his house in Wall Township. In his living room, we were set up, and I brought this tom over, and I said, "Hey, see this tom?" He goes, "Yeah, I got this picked up for dirt." He said, "Man, can I have that?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, here." I gave it to him. It fit his kit, and he took it. Well, the next time I would see this tom, it would not have wrap on it, and it would look like this. And that's when Scott refinished these drums the first time. He refinished them, he took the wraps off, and that's the kit I bought with the Fives kit. I gave him the Fives kit, and he gave me this kit, and off we went to the races. And when I moved to Florida in 2000, I brought this kit with me. When I got down here in 2000, the 10 never sounded right because I put a bottom head on a concert tom that didn't have a bearing edge. So I took the drum over to Resurrection Drums in Hollandale Beach, and they cut the bearing edges on this drum. And then this drum came to life. So now I had a nice sounding 10, nice sounding 12, but the floor tom wasn't cutting it for me. So about mid-2000s, probably about 2007, I went on eBay and I sold the floor tom, the 14x14 floor tom, and I wanted to buy a Gretsch floor tom to go with it. But I couldn't justify spending $800 on a 14x14 floor tom. So what I did was I bought a Catalina maple shell that had lugs on it but didn't have rims and didn't have legs. And I went to Interstate Music and I bought Pearl die-cast hoops, 8 lugs, bought floor tom legs, bought 10-inch die-cast hoops, 6 slugs to go on this drum, and I created this Gretsch kit the way it is today. So I have a 10, a 12, a 14x14. Now, those other shells and other drums I got in the first trade, I sold on eBay. So I sold the snare drum shell from the snare drum I stole the lugs from. I sold the 12-inch concert tom. I sold the 13-inch tom, all on eBay. Late 90s, I bought when eBay was first starting. I sold them off. When I bought this drum, this kit came together, and I used it for a bunch of years, playing gigs, church gigs mostly. And then one day, I needed a bigger drum kit for the church I was playing at in 2013, 14, and 15. This church in Palm Beach Gardens, where I did the album, Daniel McManus's album. And I was talking to Scott that day, and Scott said, you know, I still got the Noble Cooley kit. You got the snare drum from it, but I have the kit. And I said, yeah, that's pretty cool. He said, you want to trade for the little Gretsch kit? And I thought about it, and I said, okay, and we traded. So I took the Noble Cooley kit. He took the Gretsch kit, and the Gretsch kit went away. So don't have the Gretsch kit anymore. He has the Gretsch kit. When he got the Gretsch kit, he did some things to it. He put a little microphone in jack on this for the bass drum, and he started using it with a bass drum mic inside it. So I've got a little mic jack on the side of the bass drum he installed on it. Of course, I got him back because the floor tom on the Noble Cooley kit was on suspension mounts, rim suspension mounts. And I hated floor toms I didn't want it on a suspension mount. It was a 13 and a 16. So I drilled it and put floor tom legs on it. So he got the floor tom back with floor tom legs, and I got this little bass drum back with a little microphone jack on the side of it, which you will see. I'm going to show you that picture of that. So I got this kit back in 2017, right around the time I lost my job and was on my transition to my current job where I'm at today. And I started making drum covers, and that's the drum cover you saw on the front. It was a song from a play along. It was a book, a reading book, and that's a song from it, and it's a song called Progress. And I was playing the little solo sections, so you're going to see that in the video. And it's this kit with some rims mounts on it. So I have rims mounts for this. I've actually put the Pearl hardware on it for a while. I stopped using this Ludwig mount, which is a real pain in the rear end, by the way. But in 2019, I was starting to do a lot of church gigs at my current church, and I was lugging heavy hardware, and I got tired of it. And I bought the Tama Classic hardware. You have 3 videos on the Tama Classic hardware. And this is the hardware that I use with this kit. Tama Classic hardware, a Camco bass drum pedal with the chain drive. I don't use the tom mount. I have actually a stand that puts either the 10 or the 12 in the stand, and then the 14x14 floor tom. And the only last piece of my church gigging kit that's been a staple for the last year is my other Gretsch snare drum, which has another story to it too. This is the one that matches my kit, but I bought this snare drum in 1995 at a drum store in Toms River. And the guy's name was Steve, who owned the store. That's a tragic story about Steve. But really nice guy. He sold me this drum for $100. Now, being a Gretsch snare drum, it had the Gretsch throw-off on it that stuck out. And this has got a done-it throw-off on it. So the story with this goes is, when I met Dan from DMR Drums, Dan was selling and buying on eBay. And Dan had a drum that he wanted to restore to original Gretsch he needed the original Gretsch butt plate, which was on this side. I had the butt plate for the Gretsch. And he said, you've got the Gretsch butt plate on that snare drum. Can I take that from you? And I said, well, if you're going to do that, I need a done-it to replace it. So he bought a done-it to replace it. And he did the bearing edges for me. So this drum that never really sounded very good, I've got Dan's bearing edges on and snare bed. And this drum really does sound wonderful today. And then when you put the done-it throw-off on it, the drum just kind of came alive. So this $100 drum now sounds like a really nice drum. And currently I've got a blue coated hydraulic head on it, and my toms have clear hydraulic heads on it in the tradition of Steve Gadd. And the reason for that is, at church, I needed to have a really dead sound for church. And the other thing I have is what I call this is my crocheted muffler that my granddaughter Madeline made me, and I've kind of modified. So it used to stick out a little longer, but basically when you hit it, it pops up when it's sitting there. And this drum has really come to life. I really enjoy this drum now. So, bass drum's got a two heads. It's got a kick port on the front head, and it's got a EMAD on the back head. Clear EMAD. Nothing in the bass drum. And that's my setup. And usually for church, it's either 10-14 or 12-14, depending on what I want to do that day. Usually this snare drum, and I usually add one more snare cymbal stand, which is an old Ludwig that Michael Perry gave me. And I have 3 cymbal stands on the kit, usually. And the Tama tom stand. And I put that all in that little bag, and it works great. And I've been using it for a while. And I'll probably never trade this kit back. And my plan is to give this kit to one of my grandkids at some point. So that's the story behind the little maple Gretsch kit. Now it has been used in a few videos. I used it in some jazz videos in the 2018-19 era. Some of the Dave Brubeck videos where I was playing the combo stuff, drumless combo stuff. So you will see the little Gretsch kit occasionally come out. But it's mostly my gigging kit around town. I use it around town. And I find it just has the right sound. It's light enough to carry around. And I just really enjoy playing these drums. So anyhow, that's the story behind the kit. If you have any questions about any of my drums, you'll give me some inspiration for another story behind the kit. Thank you for watching. And I appreciate you taking the time to watch the story behind the kit. Have a great day. Bye.